Hashem, I say, Shemayim Oretz, da-da-da-da-dam, 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 da-da-dee-da-dam. Now listen to me, my most beautiful friends. Sometimes you want to send a message to someone you love so much, but you don't know where they are. But then there are always two who always know wherever he is. And you and I know that Eliyahu Hanavi lives forever, because he's every Eid's best friend. So it's Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi, Eliyahu. He's sending messages to all of Israel who still has not come to the Holy Land. And some of the Eden are so far away, not only physically, mentally, spiritually. Eliyahu, please bring them back. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi, Eliyahu. Angelo, Eliyahu, Angelo, Eliyahu, Hanavi, Eliyahu, Tishbi, Eliyahu, Angelo, Eliyahu, Angelo, Lebe, Emeino, Eliyahu, Eleno, Mashiach, Mashiach, Eleno, no, yo, Eleno, Mashiach, Mashiach, Eleno, Eliyahu. Mashiach, hello, Mashiach ben David.
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך, יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי,
Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to this week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. I am Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and we are broadcasting to you today from Katzrin in the Golan Heights, very close to the Lebanese border. And I am here with Ariella and Ben Casey, who have been a very active part of the World Alliance of Qara'im for the past couple of years. I am a guest in their house for this weekend, which is, of course, Shavuot is tomorrow. And it's just really great to be here. Katzrin is a beautiful, beautiful little city. The Golan Heights is, if you've never been to the Golan Heights, I highly recommend visiting it. It's always been my absolute favorite part of Israel. It's kind of this high plateau, and it's filled with waterfalls and streams and underground springs and hiking trails and a lot of history. So if you're in Israel, the next time you're in Israel, make sure you take a trip up to the Golan Heights and visit it. It really is something absolutely special. Even in the summertime when it's hot, I think it's about, 104 degrees or something like that, guys. I think it's 104 degrees, which in Celsius translates to something like 42 maybe, or something like that, if not more. Then even in the hot summer, it cools down in the evening, and it's very beautiful here. It's really a very special part of the land of Israel. So welcome. This is actually my second broadcasting from the land of Israel. I returned to Israel about a week and a half ago, and my intention is to stay. And it really has been quite an interesting transition period, I must say. I feel like now is the first time I'm kind of really getting into the energies of the land of Israel, like kind of feeling at home here. It was, a lot of just things to take care of, and I won't use the word chaos, but just a lot going on and a lot of transition. And now, for the first time in the past couple of days, I feel like I'm kind of getting into the swing of things here in Israel. And I have to say, it feels great. It really feels nice. It feels nice to be home. So Katzrin actually a couple of days ago was hit with a bunch of missiles from our lovely neighbors up north in Lebanon. And I guess always a possibility that will happen today during the talk, although so far it's been really quiet the Shabbat. But if I suddenly disappear, then it's either that the internet went bad or that Hezbollah is firing missiles, because they fired a bunch of missiles here. What was it? Maybe 3 days ago or something like that, on Thursday, and it landed. I think one landed in the city, and people were injured. Right? 2 people were injured, and then there were a bunch that landed right outside the city and caused a bunch of fires in the surrounding grasslands. And so, yeah, it's really it's not an easy situation right now in Israel, but I don't want to get bogged down in politics. We'll move on to other things like Torah. But at any rate, welcome everybody, and we'll start with the Torah study. So I wanted to talk today. I listened to a video during the week, and as I mentioned, I'm going through it, very much a transition period right now, and all transitions are filled with immense challenges. I think everyone has gone through transition periods in their life, and we know that such periods are very intense, and there are a lot of challenges, there are a lot of changes in life. And I happened to come across a video which I'd like to share. I'll share the link. Now, again, be warned, it's C.S. Lewis is the guy who does the video, and I don't really know. I've heard of him. I don't really know him too well, but it is Christian content in there. But every time they say the word Jesus, just replace it with the word Yahweh, and it's actually a beautiful video. And what he speaks about a lot, let's see if I have the link here. I think that's it. I'm going to post it. What he really speaks about, I think that's it, is taking worry, right? And especially, again, when we're going through transition periods, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of change. Things are not steady. We don't know what the next day, let alone the next week, or let alone the next month is going to bring. So he speaks about taking one's worry, and he essentially says, stop worrying. Okay, that's easier said than done, to stop worrying, right? To stop thinking about what might be in the future, regretting what might have been in the past. But he says something that's very powerful. And he says the way to do that is to realize that whatever you're going through is if it's bigger than you're able to solve, then there is a Father in heaven, and you could throw that burden onto him. You can pass that burden onto him, because he has the ability to solve problems in our lives, even when we ourselves don't always have the ability by ourselves to solve those problems. So if we take those worries, we take those problems, and we call out to Yahweh, we pass them on to Yahweh, then what we essentially do is we transform the worries into prayer. So let's say you're worried about, I don't know, am I going to have enough money to pay the rent next month, or something like that? And I actually know a couple of friends who are going through that very situation right now. I'm worried, am I going to have enough money to pay the rent right now, right? And so instead of sitting around worrying about it, will I, will I not, will I not? You take that burden, you throw it onto Yahweh, and you turn it into prayer. And you say, Yahweh, I pray to you. This is a situation that I'm in above my head right now. I don't know how to solve the situation, but I'm praying to you. You are all powerful. You're up there in heaven, and I'm down here in earth. And I pray to you that you will help me solve this situation. And now what you've done is you've taken your worry, you've taken your burden, you've thrown it onto Yahweh, you've cast it onto Yahweh. So you've cast it onto somebody to a God who actually can help solve the problem. And by turning the worry into prayer, by transforming the worry into prayer, this actually this allows us to reduce the worry, eliminate the worry in the ideal case, and to turn it into faith, into Yahweh, that he is with us, that he knows what he's doing, that he has the power and the ability to help us through anything that we get, any situation that we get into. And it actually frees our minds. And besides the faith aspect of it, by freeing our minds from all the worry, it now allows us to focus on solutions to the problems rather than focus on the problems themselves, right? Because we all know, all of us have been in this situation before in our lives, where we get caught up in worry, right? Sometimes maybe we'll wake up in the middle of the night and can't fall back asleep because we're worrying about one thing or another. And we know that can be very debilitating, and it is also an energy drain. It drains all our energy right out of us, and suddenly all our energy, which could be much better used and much better directed towards finding good solutions to problems, towards finding innovative solutions towards problems, all of that is now siphoned off of us, or siphoned away from us, and goes into this black hole, this endless pit, this whirlpool known as worry and concern and fear and all of these kinds of negative emotions that just really don't solve the problem at all. So by transforming worry into prayer, it actually accomplishes two things. Number one, it allows us to throw our problems onto someone who can actually help us solve them, meaning Yahweh on the one hand. And on the other hand, it now actually frees our minds so we're not caught up, we're not swirling around in this endless, overwhelming whirlpool of worry and stress and concern and just, non-productive thinking. And it allows us there to refocus our minds, to refocus our energies on the solutions to the problems rather than on the problems themselves. So that is my opening thought for the day. I shared the video there, and if you don't want to follow the link, the name of the video, if I could just find it for 1 second here, is, let's see what did I do with it. It's called Give It to God and Free Your Mind from Worries. I'm going to even type that in. Okay, give it to God and free your mind from worries. And the name of the channel is, where to go? Soulful Devotions. Soulful Devotions. Okay. So if you're going through a difficult time right now, if you're going through a transition period, if worries are consuming your thoughts at this point in time, I really found this video. It's maybe only about 10, 15 minutes, no, about 10 minutes long. And I really recommend listening to this video. The message there was really powerful. Again, I warn people there is Christian content, so it'll say things like, throw your burdens on Jesus. Just, you guys all know how to copy and paste, right? We're all in the computer age. Just, cut and paste. Just cut out the word Jesus, replace it with the word Yahweh, and you're good to go. You're good to go. But it's a very powerful video, and I know these are very, very difficult. Shabbat Shalom Yarden. These are very difficult, challenging times for a lot of people. I mean, there are, we have crossed boundaries, whether it's in the United States of America, whether it's in Israel, whether it's other places. I think that we have not crossed in the past. There's some corners that have been turned in recent years that it's just completely new territory. I mean, it almost seems like completely foreign terrain from what a lot of us have been used to growing up, and just the link above is for song, so it's not the right link. Okay, well, just type in "Give It to God and Free Your Mind from Worries" by Soulful Devotions, and you'll get it. Okay, and so a lot of people are going through things they really never had to deal with before in their entire lives. They're going through new challenges that are just completely different from what they've had to face in the past, and so I think this is really relevant to what a lot of people are going through. So wait, hold on 1 second. Guys, just give me 1 second. I'm going to be right back. One second. I'm just going to put on my headphones here. Okay. All right, let's do a sound check. Can you guys hear me now? Marianana McDonough, can you hear me? Suryo, can you hear me? Sound check. Hello. Okay, cool. Excellent. All right, so that is my opening message for today, which is to the power of transforming worry into prayer, into taking something that seems overwhelming, taking something that seems above and beyond our ability to solve on our own when we feel that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, and then taking that, throwing the burden onto Yahweh, transforming the worry into prayer, and that gives us faith, that gives us security, because now we've enlisted Yahweh, we've enlisted a God who actually has the power, the wisdom, the knowledge to help us solve that problem. And we've taken that burden off of ourselves, put it on Yahweh's shoulders together with us, right? It doesn't mean he's going to do all the work for us, but put it on his shoulders. So now we're working with him together to solve the problem. And this actually frees our mind to be able, on a very practical basis, to come off of that worry and that fear and free our mind to be able to focus more on practical or innovative solutions to the problems that may come up. So listen to the video. It's a very, very powerful video. Again, for those of you who just joined me, replace, cut and paste, cut out the word Jesus, replace it with the word Yahweh, and you're good to go. Okay, so that is my opening monologue. And now we're going to get into some Torah study. So we are going through Leviticus 18, if you guys remember. And we started the topic of leprosy, which is not leprosy. That's the way it's traditionally been translated, as leprosy. As we explored last week, it's not a very good translation. Skin disease might be a more general translation, and then there are different types of skin ailments that are being spoken about. But the bottom line is it's the kind of skin disease. Again, I always use the example of the cooties, where if you're back in the 5th grade and you're in the schoolyard and someone walks into the schoolyard and has some kind of horrible skin disease, then you're basically, for good or for bad, all the rest of the kids are going to basically stay far away from that kid until the skin disease clears up, right? And that, again, as I've been saying from the beginning, when we started this study on the issue of ritual impurity, ritual purity, ritual impurity, that really, it seems to me that the whole idea of ritual impurity is its various things that give one, quote unquote, the cooties, that make that create a certain situation where other people would say, I got to get away from this person temporarily until that situation clears up, right? It's beyond things that are dirty. It's beyond things even that are gross. It's things that are so, in a sense, repulsive that people just want to distance themselves from the person that has gotten in themselves in a situation. Sometimes for no fault of their own. But that is really the idea of ritual impurity. And as it relates to the Torah, the restriction, when one is in a state of ritual impurity for whatever reason, then the Torah is concerned that such a person does not go within the province of Yahweh's house, does not go within the province of God's house, which we've said many times before is, in terms of place, is within the courtyard of the tabernacle, and does not have any contact with anything that has been dedicated to Yahweh, meaning has been dedicated to the tabernacle. So let's say somebody says, okay, I want to say thank you to Yahweh, so I'm going to take this lamb and I'm going to dedicate it to Yahweh. I'm going to take it next week and I'm going to sacrifice it to Yahweh in the temple. That is now called a kodesh. It's now a holy object. It's now something that's been dedicated to Yahweh, and no one that's in a state of ritual impurity can now come in contact with that thing, or specifically in certain cases consume that food or that thing that has now been dedicated to Yahweh, right? So again, anyone who's in a state of ritual impurity, it doesn't matter what they do in their day-to-day life. They can go to the marketplace. They can go to the grocery store. They can drive around town or whatever. But the Torah sets up a specific restriction against coming within the province of Yahweh's tabernacle, or things that have been dedicated to Yahweh, while one is in a state of ritual impurity. Okay, not mixing impurity with holiness, as we saw in previous weeks. Okay, so that's the issue here. And if we now go to Leviticus chapter 13, let me bring it up in the Hebrew, and I'll share the screen. And we review a little bit. So if you remember, let me share the screen now. Shalom, Phil. Okay. Okay, you guys should all be able to see the screen right now. Shalom, Phil. Shalom, Eden Lerange. Shalom, Mauricio. So if we look at Leviticus chapter 13, let's bring it up in Hebrew here. Right, so chapter 13, just review, started this topic of skin disease. Okay. And Leviticus chapter 12, we were speaking about childbirth, right? So after a woman gives birth to a child, then all that, I guess the technical term would be gunk. All that gunk is still kind of cleaning itself out. And so the woman enters a state of ritual impurity, right? So again, we get an idea. And again, there's no moral judgment here of someone who enters a state of ritual impurity, as we're going to see in upcoming chapters. Even a man and a woman who have sexual relations within the context of marriage that even leads to the birth of a child, both of them become ritually impure, because the release of semen is also considered something that makes a person impure, because it's kind of, right, you don't want to be around someone if they're covered with that, right? And so all of these things we're going to see get into the realm of some kind of ickiness, some kind of having the cooties, for lack of a more technical term. And so it's important to keep that in mind. And when someone has the cooties, they are required by the Torah to stay away from the house of God and anything that's been dedicated to the house of God. Okay, so we've said that many times before. That's just for summary. And let me bring up some of the commentaries here that we usually use. So we'll go get our Everett Fox, get our Robert Alter. Oops, Everett Fox again. Let's go get our Robert Alter. Let's get another Robert Alter. Torah, Robert Alter. Bookmarks, Torah, Everett Fox. Okay. Make this a little bit bigger. This a little bit bigger. Make this one a little bit bigger. And then we're looking for Leviticus 13. Leviticus 13. It's page 940. Page 940. Put down the commentary section over here. Okay. Okay. So just to review, so we're speaking about these various laws of leprosy, and the one that we covered most recently, which was Leviticus chapter 13, verses 9 through 17. So this seems to be speaking about some kind of chronic skin disease, which every so often has flare-ups. And when there's a flare-up, meaning when raw skin is exposed or raw flesh is exposed that pokes through the skin, then the person enters this state of ritual purity, and he's declared impure until the situation clears itself up. Okay, so again, because this stuff is very technical, but nonetheless important because it's part of the Torah, I'm not going to go back over the details of it. Let's just move on to the next one. Okay, and we're going to start in Leviticus chapter 13, verse 18. Okay, so verse 18 says, "Ubasar ki iebo bi'oro shahin wanirpa." So if someone's flesh has in it, or in the flesh of someone's skin, there's shachin. So what is shachin? So the first thing to notice is that this shachin is actually one of the 10 plagues. Let's just take a look at that very briefly. Usually translated as boils. We see here in Exodus chapter 9, verse 9. Okay. I'll just bring it up in the English. Okay. So we're talking about here the plague of boils. And that was plague number, I think plague number 7, if my count is correct. So at any rate, I'll just read it in English. Then Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, take handfuls of soot from a furnace and have Moses toss it in the air in the presence of Pharaoh. It will become fine dust over the whole land of Egypt and festering boils. The English word here is boils. Okay. The Hebrew word there is shachin. Same word. Will break out on people and animals throughout the land. Verse 10, so they took soot from a furnace and stood before Pharaoh. Moses tossed it into the air, and festering boils broke out on people and animals. The magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils that were on them and on all the Egyptians. But Yahweh hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as Yahweh had said to Moses. So let's take a look at that very briefly. We'll go to Exodus chapter 9, verse 10. We'll take a look at it in the Hebrew. Just to see that word and how it's used. So Exodus chapter 9, verse 10. So they took soot from the furnace. And they stood before Pharaoh. And Moses tossed it up towards the sky. So it was boils, and abuot means, as it's an onomatopoeic word, and it means bubbling. Okay, they translate it as festering, but it really means like bubbling boils, right? So one could use one's imagination to see what that must have looked like and felt like. Okay, that it broke out all over people and also over the animals. Okay, okay, festering boils or bubbling boils. That's what we're talking about. It's the exact same word, this word shachin that we see right here, okay, which I've highlighted. It's the same word that we see right here in Leviticus chapter 13, verse 18, that is now one of the skin afflictions that's being spoken about, okay? So if someone has these boils, okay, these bubbling boils on their skin, one yirpa, and it goes away, they're cured of it, okay? Wahaya, במקום השחין, שאת לבנה, או בהרת לבנה, Adam dometh. So if this shall be in place of the boil, a seit livana. So sometimes we'll translate a seit as a scale. Let's again, I want to go with Robert Alter's translation. Body inflammation rash. I think he calls that one an inflammation. Okay, an inflammation. So if somebody has an inflammation, if the boil goes away and there's a white inflammation, okay, livana or baheret, a white or some kind of bright information. I'm sorry. I'll say that again. A baheret livana. Okay, if there's a white inflammation or a white bright spot, I'm sorry, a white reddish bright spot, baheret livana adam dometh. Okay, so this white reddish, maybe pink is the implication there, somewhere between white and red, or maybe it's alternating white and red. Whatever it is, the boil goes away. And there's some kind of bright spot, some kind of inflammation, bright inflammation that's left behind. When yira ela kohen, then it is it's taken a look at by the kohen, right? So the kohanim, as we've seen throughout this entire chapter, and as it makes sense, the kohanim, they are in a certain sense the doctors for these situations. Okay, not doctors in the sense that they're going to heal physically the ailment, but they're the doctors that are going to make the diagnosis as to whether this person is now in a state of ritual purity or he's not in a state of ritual purity. And they're going to instruct the people how, if they are in a state of ritual impurity, to work towards getting back to a state of ritual purity, to get rid of it from a spiritual point of view, because the Kohanim, as we know, and the Levites as a whole, their main responsibility is the tabernacle, is the holy area, the Mikdash, the sanctuary of God, the province of tabernacle. Their main job, one could say, is to make sure that it stays ritually clean, that it stays ritually pure, and to make sure that the sacrificial system is carried out according to the rules that are laid down in the book of Leviticus, which we covered in chapters 1 through 7 of the book of Leviticus. Okay, so without focusing on it too much, or without delaying on it too much, let's just let me get a Robert Alter translation for that one. Just a little bit of perspective and maybe some commentary. Okay, so he says, verse 18, and a body in which there be a burning rash on the skin that is healed, and there be in the place of the burning rash a white inflammation or reddish white shiny spot, okay, and it be seen by the priest. That's what we're up to. We'll go back to the Hebrew here. Right. Where were we? Oh, that's just Exodus 9. Verse 20. We ra'a kohen wahini mar'eha shafal mina or. And if the Kohen takes a look at it and sees and notices that its appearance is shafal, meaning like indented, I guess you could say, or an indentation. Okay, shafal means a flat or a kind of concave surface. So, for instance, in the land of Israel, there's a mountainous. So there's the mountainous central region. You can go pretty much all the way down past Jerusalem into the Judean hills, and you're going to have a central region that's mountainous. If you go to the east of that central region, then you're going to go into the Jordan Rift Valley, which is where you have the Kinneret Lake, the Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, which ultimately connects to the Dead Sea. And then ultimately, if you follow that line down south, it's going to connect to the Red Sea. So that's the Jordan Rift Valley. But if you go to the west of the central mountain range that runs through Israel, you're going to get to an area that's called the Shvela, which is usually translated as the coastal plain. That's where you're going to find cities like Tel Aviv, Netanya, Bat Yam, and so Shvela means the flat area, okay, or the almost like the lowlands, I guess it would be translated as. Okay, so shafal comes from that same root. Okay, so if its appearance, if that leftover whatever inflammation is left over, if it looks like it's indented, if it looks like it's lower than the rest of the surrounding skin, okay, we see araf fachlavan, and the hair growing out of it has turned white, and we've seen this before. This is one of the common signs that we saw up above with some of the other symptoms. Okay, that the hair within the affected area becomes white. Okay, hakohen, then the Kohen shall declare that person as ritually impure, as having the cooties. Nega tzaraat hi b'shachin parha, and this is now the affliction of tzaraat, the affliction of, again, usually traditionally translated as leprosy, but we'll go with Robert Alter's translation, which is, what is he translated again? Should present the skin of his body inflammation. Skin blanch is what he translates it as, right? Okay. I've seen it translated sometimes as scale disease. We'll go with skin blanch. Okay. So he has this tzaraat. Okay. He has a skin affliction. Okay. So this is the skin affliction. This is the skin affliction that has occurred after the breaking out of boils. It's the leftover after the boils clear up. Then it's possible to have this skin affliction of tzaraat from what remains after the boils clear themselves up. Okay, verse 21. Wa'im yir'ena kohen wahine ein base'ar lavan. If the Kohen shall take a look at it and sees that there is not in that afflicted area, right, the spot that's left, or the inflammation that's left after the bubbling boils clear up, if there's no white hair in it, and it's not indented, there's not an indentation, so it doesn't look like it's going down. Mina or wahi teha, and it has become dim or dark, meaning, right, the opposite of having a white, bright, inflamed spot with white hair. It just it basically returns to the regular skin color. Then the Kohen shall quarantine. We all know about quarantine since 2020. The Kohen shall quarantine this person for 7 days. Okay, so if it looks like it's cleared up, and we've seen this before, the Kohen is not going to say, okay, you're good to go, you're back to normal. The Kohen is going to say, okay, let's just make sure that this affliction is really cleared up. We're going to keep you aside for 7 days. You're not allowed to go near the temple province. You're not allowed to deal with anything that is dedicated to the temple, that's dedicated to Yahweh, which is going to keep you aside. Okay, you keep your distance from those things for 7 days. And verse 22, Wa'im bashat tifsheh ba'or utimeh kohen oto nerahu hi. Okay, and if after those 7 days it turns out that it is spread, meaning that what we spoke about earlier, okay, the white spot, the white inflammation with the white hair, and the appearance of going down in the skin, of being lower than the skin, then the Kohen shall declare that person as being ritually impure, as having the cooties. It is the affliction of tzarat. It doesn't mention here explicitly the word tzarat, but that's the implication. It's the affliction. Okay. V'im tachtea da'amod habaher lo pashta tzarevet hashachin hi what ti'ero kohen. And if instead, after these 7 days, if that bright spot, okay, has not spread out after those 7 days, then tzarevet shachin hi. Tzarevet is usually translated as a scar. Shachin hi with ti'ero kohen. Then all it was just a regular scar that's left over after these boils, and the Kohen shall now declare the person pure. So let's review a little bit what we're speaking about here. Okay, a person has boils. All right, so you can get a picture. Okay, not going to be a very pretty picture, but hey, this stuff is okay. So there we go. Some pictures of skin boils. Okay. All right, various artists, photographers' renditions of skin boils. So let's go with this first one here. Just pick one at random. Okay. So that is eventually going to clear up. Okay. And by the way, it's interesting, but the Torah does not say that when the person has the actual boils that he is impure. It's only after these boils clear up that it will be determined whether the results of, or what's left after the boils clear up, whether that is actually tzara'at, quote unquote leprosy, or whether it's just a normal scar. If it's this disease, if it's this affliction called, usually translated incorrectly, but traditionally translated as leprosy, then the Kohen will declare him impure. If it looks like it's clearing up, then the Kohen will say, hold on, we're not out of the hot water yet. He's going to put him aside for 7 days, check again after 7 days, and then either declare the person as tameh or tahor. Either declare the person as having tzarat or as not having tzarat. In the case that the Kohen sees that the person does not have tzarat, that these symptoms of tzarat, the typical symptoms of an inflammation, white hair, a white spot, did not stay or did not come back, then the Kohen will say, well, it's just a regular scar that's left over from the boils. This person is good to go. Okay, and we've seen this a bunch of times before. Okay, there's a 7-day waiting period. Okay, up above we actually saw 2 7-day waiting periods. In this case, it's a single 7-day waiting period where the person is put aside and then checked again after 7 days, and then a final determination is made. Okay, let's move on. Okay, we'll see if there's any commentary maybe that Robert Alter has to add here. So we're in verse 18. Nope, he doesn't have anything there. So let's just move ahead. And we are now in verse 24. Okay. So if a person has a burn, michwat esh is a burn from fire, okay, in his flesh, so it's a burn, right? And it shall be that the michyat, the live flesh, meaning the exposed flesh from the burn, is bright white, is bright reddish white or just white. So we have the same. So just to put things in context here, we have a similar situation as the previous case. The previous case is the person had boils, it clears up, and something is left behind. Here, the person has a burn. Okay, the person gets burnt. Okay, and for whatever reason, right? And now that clears up, and now something is left behind. Okay, and it's the same or very similar symptoms. If we have this inflammation that's whitish red or white, verse 25. וראה אותה הכהן והנה נהפך שיער לבן בהרת. So if the Kohen the Kohen takes a look at it, and if he sees that the hair in the affected area is turned white, again, that's our usual symptom, white hair, okay? Baheret, within the inflammation, umareha amok mina or, and its appearance is deeper from the skin. Amok is basically the same word as the word we saw above, which is shafal. Okay, remember we said shafal means indented, right? And shvela means the coastal plain or the lowlands. So here, amok also means pretty much the same thing. It means a deep spot, and you actually have a not quite exactly related, but the word amek means a valley or an indentation in the landscape. Okay, so it's more or less the same thing. Maybe the word amok implies slightly even deeper indentation in the skin. But at any rate, there's some kind of indentation in the skin. Mina on tarati, then the person is declared to have this disease of tarat, the skin condition known as tarat, which again, Robert Alter translates as skin blanch. And now we see why he translates it as skin blanch, because it's a bright inflammation. There's white hair growing out of it, right? That seems to be the common symptom. Okay, so leprosy, scale disease, which are traditional translations, don't really describe what's going on, although nobody really knows what this is. There are a lot of opinions out there, but I think that Robert Alter's translation of skin blanch is a pretty good translation. But we could just call it by tibur tzaraat. It's some kind of disease. It's some kind of skin affliction that is left behind after the burn clears up. Just like in the previous verses that we read, it's a skin condition that involves an inflammation, white hair, and white reddish skin. Maybe that implies pinkish skin, white red, right? It's these symptoms that are left behind, which now the Kohen says this is not just a regular scar. This is something else going on. This is some kind of special skin condition known as tzaraat. Sorry about that. Just quick WhatsApp here. This is some kind of special skin condition. Oh, that's it. This is some kind of special skin condition, which, I'm sorry, someone keeps on calling me, and I don't know how to make it stop here. This is some kind of special skin condition known as tzaraat, which is now characterized by the fact that this person now enters a state of ritual impurity. Okay. Okay, so where were we? We were right here. Oops. Okay. Tzarati ba michva parcha. This is tzarat. This is this skin blanch that's left over from burns that had broken out on the skin. Utimeato kohen, and the Kohen declares him to be in a state of ritual impurity, to have the kudis. Nega tzarati. He now has this disease or this affliction of tzarat. Okay. V'im yirena kohen wahine en baheret se'ar en baheret se'ar lavan shvela enena. So if the Kohen takes a look at it and sees that there v'hine en baheret se'ar lavan, that in that inflamed area, in that affected area, there's no white hair, and shefala enena, and there's no skin indentation. Mina or, there's no skin that is indented deep from the regular skin around it. Wahine keha, and in fact that it has begun to clear up. It's become dim, meaning that white inflammation is cleared up and it's returned to its regular skin color. Wahiskiro hakohen shivat yamim, the Kohen shall set him aside, shall quarantine him for 7 days. So it's exactly the same situation, more or less, that we have in the previous case of shachin, that we have in the previous case of boils. Here we're talking about a burn, And so if the Kohen sees it's clearing up, he doesn't say, "Okay, you're good to go" quite yet. He says, "We're going to put you aside for 7 days. We're going to quarantine you for 7 days." Verse 27, where Kohen b'yam shvi'i, the Kohen shall take a look at him on the 7th day. And if the original condition, okay, meaning the white hair, the indentations in the skin, the reddish white skin, if it's spread out across the skin, then the Kohen shall declare him to be in a state of ritual impurity. Nega tzarati, this is indeed the affliction of tzarat, the affliction of, Robert Alter call again, skin blanch. Okay, im tachteha amod habaheret lo pashta, and if the inflammation stays the same, it has not spread out, but is not spread out across the skin, and it has remained more or less the dim skin color. It's returned to its natural skin color. It is all it is a seit. Again, that is kind of a, oh god, let's see how Robert translates that one. He calls that one an inflammation. Okay, so we'll go with that. It's an inflammation, but it really means a raised spot. Laset means from the word laset, to rise up. It means kind of like a leftover kind of scar, I guess. It's a scar from the leftover from the burn. And the Kohen shall declare him as being in a state of ritual purity. It turns out it was just a regular scar from the burn. Okay, so we see a couple of very interesting things here. Okay, that in these two situations that we read from here to here, boils, and here a burn, these are regular things that can happen. These have nothing to do with the disease of tzara'at. These have nothing to do with the disease of skin blanch, leprosy, scale disease, whatever you want to translate it as. These are regular occurrences which, in their wake, once they clear up, can leave behind this disease of tzara'at. So it's not the actual boil that causes a state of ritual impurity. It's not getting burned, right? You burn your finger on the stove, or maybe even worse, God forbid, right? That doesn't make the person enter into a state of ritual impurity. It's after it clears up, if there's these symptoms left behind, which include inflammation, reddish white skin, white hair, and an indentation in the skin, then it turns out that it's this affliction of tzara'at. Okay? All right. Let's take a little mini break there and ask, are there any questions? Are there any comments so far? Guys, do you have any questions?
I'm following it. It's good.
Okay. All right. Cool. If you do, let me know. It's a little bit on the technical side, right? But hey,
But it made it more clear.
that's the Torah. The Torah is technical. be grateful you're not going in and you actually have to deal with this on a regular basis, right?
The body creates a weakness there, which that makes sense. If you got a boil and it makes a weakness there, and then you get something worse.
Right. Or you get some kind, I mean, maybe it's a good time to take a little mini detour and look at a couple places where this issue of tzara'at comes up. So we did look at one last week, but maybe it would be instructive just to very briefly take a look at it again, and that is in Exodus. Well, let me find it this way. Tzara'at. Oh, where to go? That's weird. Okay, I'll have to find it on my own. It's going to be in Exodus. Let's see here. It's going to be around Exodus. I think it's going to be Exodus 3. If I'm not mistaken. All right, so give me 1 second, everyone, to find it. We'll just stick with the English for now. Go a little bit faster. Is it 3? Maybe 4. 3 shoes. Sign. So that's fun. Second. Yeah, it's 4. Okay, so I'll just read the English and we'll switch over to the Hebrew when we need to. Okay, so Moses is now at the incident of the burning bush, and Moses is now saying to God, now Moses is being sent back to Egypt, a job that he definitely does not want. Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, Yahweh did not appear to you? Then Yahweh said to him, what is that in your hand? And then we have the staff. He throws it down on the ground, turns to a snake, picks it back up, and it turns back into a staff. Right? And then in verse 6, Exodus chapter 4, verse 6, Yahweh said to him, or Yahweh said, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. We looked at this verse last week. Okay, let's just take a look at this one verse. This is Exodus chapter 4, verse 6. Let me grab this in the Hebrew. Yep. Okay. So verse 6 says in the Hebrew, okay, Wayomer Yahweh lo, and Yahweh said to him, Od, also do this, Haved na yadcha bechekecha, place your hand into your breast, meaning inside your cloak. V'yaver yado becheko, and he placed his hand onto his breast, v'yotzi'ah, and he took it back out. Wahini yado mitzara'at kashaleg, and his hand was mitzora'at, was leprous, is the way, again, they traditionally translate it, but it means had this disease. The name of the disease is tzara'at, right? Robert Alter translates it as skin blanch. So his hand had been skin blanched, had been affected, or had been affected with skin blanch. Okay, and it was as white as snow. Kashaleg. Shaleg is snow. Sheleg is snow. Okay, kashaleg means like snow. Okay, so we see again that this disease, whatever it is of tzara'at, is associated with white skin, with a white spot, with white hair. Okay, and then he brings it back in, and it disappears. Okay, the other place, or one of the other places that we see the issue of tzara'at. Go back to the concordance here. Is when Miriam and Aharon speak out against Moses. Okay, they make fun of his Cushite wife. And let me just find it. Oops. All right, let's do it this way. Tzarat. Here, let's grab this. Clean. So Leviticus is in Numbers. Let's find it here. Okay. Leviticus. Oh, that's right. Kings. Okay, you know what? I can't find it. Let me do it this way. Miriam speaks against Moses. Numbers chapter 12. Let's take a look at Numbers chapter 12. Numbers chapter 12. Okay, so we know the story. I'm not going to go through the whole story, okay? But very briefly, Miriam and Aaron began to talk about Moses because of his Cushite wife, which, by the way, as a quick side note, so a lot of people have said over the years, over the generations, that he had two wives because Zipporah was not a Cushite. The word Cush is usually understood as Ethiopian. Zipporah, his wife, was not an Ethiopian. She was a Midianite. However, there was a city named Kish and the inhabitants of Kish, and Kish was basically in the land of Midian, and the inhabitants of Kish were sometimes called Cushites. So it's probably speaking about that. I don't think there's any indication anywhere that Moses had more than one wife at all. So it really means a Kishite wife, okay, a woman from the city of Kish, okay. At any rate, has the Lord spoken only through Moses? They asked, hasn't he also spoken through us, etc. Come out of the tent of meeting. Okay. At once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, come out to the tent of meeting, all three of you. So the three of them went out. Then Yahweh came down in a pillar of cloud. He stood at the entrance of the tent and summoned Aaron and Miriam. When the two of them stepped forward, he said, listen to my words. When there's a prophet among you, I, Yahweh, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams, but this is not true of my servant Moses. He's faithful in all my house. When with him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of Yahweh. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? The anger of Yahweh burned against them, and he left them. When the cloud lifted from above the tent, Miriam's skin was leprous, and it became as white as snow. Okay. Aaron turned toward her and saw that she had defiling skin disease, and he said to Moses, please, my Lord, etc. Let's switch over to the Hebrew now. So this is Numbers chapter 12, verse 10. Okay, let's take a look at this briefly in the Hebrew. Okay, verse 9. So Yahweh became incensed at them, at Miriam and Aaron, and went away. And the cloud, remember God is always appearing, Yahweh is always appearing inside a cloud. Okay, it lifted itself up away from the tent. Wahine Miriam mitzorat kashaleg. And behold, Miriam was leprous like snow. It's exactly the same words that we see in Exodus chapter 4, verse 6. When Moses reached his hand into his cloak, pulled it back out, it was mitzorat kashaleg. It was as white, or it was leprous like snow. Okay, it's the same thing here. Waifen Aaron el Miriam, and Aaron turned towards Miriam, but he named mitzorat, and behold, she was again leprous, or she was afflicted with what? With skin blanch, with this disease of tzaraat. Okay, and then she asked Moses to pray for her, etc. Okay, but the point is that we see that in the case of Moses in Exodus chapter 4, when he's given the sign to take back to Pharaoh, and we see here in the case of Miriam, when she's punished for speaking out against Moses' wife, that I won't say the punishment, because the first case is not a punishment, but the affliction, okay, that is, or the condition that's put upon them is tzaraat. So tzaraat seems to be something that is not just a regular disease that you get by, I don't know, getting bitten by a tick out in the woods or something like that. There seems to be some kind of divine element to this disease of tzaraat. There seems to be something that is above and beyond just a regular physical disease, and there's something else going on there, and that's why when the Kohanim look at this disease and see whether it's cleared up or not, if it is cleared up, they say, oh, it was just a regular scar. The boils have cleared up, and what's left behind was just a regular scar. Or the burns have cleared up, and what's left behind is a regular scar. Or if it doesn't clear up, then now there's the leftover. The result of it is this tzaraat. Okay, so that's the traditional idea that it's some kind of punishment from God. It's usually based on this idea here. I'll be 100% honest. I'm not 100% convinced of that, because I think just because it's a punishment here for Miriam doesn't mean that whenever someone has tzaraat, that it's necessarily a punishment. It might just be, again, some kind of skin affliction that's left behind, which is so icky, which is so cootie inducing that the Kohanim or Yahweh has decided, the Torah has decided that you cannot go near the tabernacle in such a state. Okay, but it's usually understood as some kind of spiritual affliction or some kind of spiritual punishment. That may be the case, or that may not be the case. Okay, but I did want to point it out. All right, let's go on. So to make a long story short, we actually read that. Okay, Okay, so now we go to verse 29. Okay. Any questions, any comments so far? Anybody? Guys, you have any questions or comments? Following along? It's pretty clear? Okay, cool. Alrighty. So let me close this out. Let me just make sure everything looks like it's working here correctly. Okay. Verse 29. Ish o isha ki ebo naga v'rosh o b'zakan. So any man or woman who has some kind of affliction, some kind of translate here. Sore. Oh, I don't like the translation. All right, we'll go with sore. Some kind of affliction or some kind of appearance. You know, something's a bit wrong. Barosh or bezakan in their head or in their beard, and of course that implies the head where the part of the head where the hair is, and with their beard, and of course it does say man or woman. So if a woman that has a beard, I guess we're talking about, I don't know, Greeks or Italians. No, sorry, bad job. Sorry. Okay, so any rate, so verse 30, Ra'ah Kohen et Hanega. So the Kohen will take a look at this affliction. So take a look at the sore. Wahine mar'e amok mina or. And again, its appearance is indented from, it's deeper than the surrounding skin. Ubo ser tzahov. And around it is, and this time it doesn't say ser lavan. It doesn't say white. It says yellow. Okay, tzahov is yellow, or really more gold colored. Okay, the word zahov is related to the word zahav. The word zahav means gold. The word zahov, Saudi is actually in the Tiberian pronunciation is actually sahov, right? So it sounds almost like zahav or zahov. So it means kind of like gold colored. Translated as yellow here, but again, it's the same idea, right? There's kind of a whitish hair or light, brighter hair. Okay. Uboset zahov dak, so very thin, blondish hair. Utimeo to a kohen. The kohen shall declare him impure, as having entered a state of ritual impurity. Netek fu. Okay, it is some kind of, netek means something that's become detached, and here they translate it as a scale. It's some kind of portion of the skin that's become detached from the surrounding skin. Okay. Tarat Rosh or Hazakanhu. It is the affliction of Tarat that affects either the hair of the head or the hair of the beard. Okay. Verse 31. Chi yir'eh kohen et nega hanetek wahine in marehu amok. So if the kohen will take a look at this detached skin, this scaly skin, wahine ein marehu amok, and it doesn't appear to be any deeper than the surrounding skin. Mina or waser shahor enbo, and mina or vaser. I'm sorry, vaser shahor enbo, and there is no black hair in it. We skid a kohen, and then the kohen shall quarantine this person at nega netek shivat yamim to see if it is indeed this scale disease, this detached skin disease, which is again part of tzarat. This kohen shall quarantine the person for 7 days. Okay. Verse 32. The kohen shall take a look at the situation or the sore after the 7th day. Wahine lo pasa hanetek, and if this scaly skin, if this detached skin did not spread out, below ayabos ser sahov, and there's not in it anymore any yellow or any blonde colored skin. Marei hanetek en amok mina or, and if the appearance of these scales is not deeper than the surrounding skin. Okay, so this is after 7 days. Wahitgala et hanetek lo yigaleach. Then that area is not to be shaved. Okay, not to be the hair around it is not to be shaved, and the kohen shall quarantine the person again for another 7 days. Shivat yamim shenit. Okay, and this time we see, as we saw in some of the earlier verses, but not in the recent verses, that now we have 2 periods of quarantine, 2 7-day periods of quarantine. Okay, in the previous 2 cases that we considered, which was the boil and the burn, there was only if the symptoms seemed to have gone away, then there was a 7-day period of quarantine. But this now requires 2 7-day periods of quarantine. That's what we saw in the first situation that we came across, where there were 2 7-day periods of quarantine. Okay, so that would imply either that it takes a little bit longer to clear up, or that it's considered a more serious situation. Okay, where were we? Let's see. Yeah, okay. Right. So here's the second 7-day period of quarantine. Verse 34, and so after that's the end of that second 7-day period, and indeed this scaly skin, this detached skin did not spread out, and it doesn't look like it's indented deeper than the surrounding skin. Then the Kohen shall declare him as being in a state of ritual purity, as having been as being in a state of ritual purity, and he washes his clothes, and he is now declared as pure. Okay, so we see here also that we have the added thing to get back or to be declared pure. He now has to wash his clothes. Okay, we actually saw that above. If I could find it. So here in this first situation, okay, where we had 2 7-day periods, again, to get out of that suspected state of ritual impurity, he has to wash his clothes. Okay. So when there's 2 7-day periods, right, the Kohen, it implies that there's a potentially more serious situation here, and so it's not just like it was with the boil or with the burn. Wait 7 days, and if it's cleared up, you're good to go. If it hasn't cleared up, then you're declared as having tzara'at. Here, with the 2 7-day periods, even after the person is declared to not have the affliction of tzara'at, he, in addition to being, before he's declared clear of everything, he also has to wash his clothes. So these are more serious cases. Okay, these are more serious cases. The first case and this current case that we're considering here. Okay, because with the hair. Okay, the second, where are we? Right here. So we're now in verse 35. Im pasayif she hanetek ba'or achrei taharato, and if it comes back, so let's say now the Kohen is now declared unclear, you're good to go. He waited the 2 7-day periods. He says you're clear, you're good to go. Just wash your clothes. You're back to a state of ritual purity. Now he goes away. He's done, and a couple of days later, it seems to come back. Okay, the scaly skin or this detached skin comes back after he had already been declared pure. What happens? Okay, so the Kohen, okay, the Kohen will take a look at him, and if he declares indeed, if the Kohen sees indeed that this scaly skin has Ah, okay. So if he sees that now the scaly skin is spread out, he doesn't have to go back to the Kohen to see if there's any of this blonde skin or this yellow hair. He's immediately declared impure. So we saw this also up above with the more serious case. It goes away, then it seems to come back. Immediately, he's declared as impure. Okay, if it goes away, or if it seems to go away, but it comes right back, then something else is going on there, is the point. Okay? And if he goes back, okay, but there is indeed scaly skin, but the hair is not yellow, it's black. Okay, that even though the scales left or scaly skin left, nonetheless he's declared tahor, he's declared pure, and the Kohen will now, or he's deemed to be pure, and the Kohen will now declare him as pure. So that's a situation without getting again into all the technical details. This is similar to what we saw up above, that in these more serious cases where there are 2 7-day periods of quarantine, that the person then has to wash his clothes, and he has to keep an eye out. If something reappears, then immediately he goes back to the Kohen, and he's declared as impure. Because if it comes back even after if it looks like it went away but then comes right back, then it really had never gone away to begin with, and immediately he's declared as being in a state of ritual impurity. Okay, so that's a little bit in contrast to those less serious cases that we saw with the boils and the burn. These are more serious cases, and so there's more involved, to make a long story short. Okay, again, I don't want to really deep dive into all the details because it's just not necessary. We want to kind of get a taste of what's going on, right, without having to worry about every single one of the details. Verse 38, Ish, Oishaki eba or b'saram beharot levanot. So what is beharot? Beharot is white spots or bright spots. Let's see how Robert also translates that one. This is 38. Okay. So he translates that as multiple white shiny spots. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, I think now down more or less to the end of the chapter, again, because we're not Kohanim, we don't need to become 100% experts on all this. I think we get an idea of what's going on, right? So let me kind of go through a little bit more in express mode. I'll point out things if they really need to be pointed out. But if not, we get the idea. It's all of these kinds of skin afflictions. The Kohen has to take a look at them. There's either, if it's a more serious skin affliction, then there are 2 7-day periods of quarantine, followed by, and any one of those, at the end of any one of those 7-day periods, then the Kohen can say this person has tzaraat. If he's clear after the 2 weeks, he goes home, but it even then may reappear. And if it does, then he's immediately declared as having tzaraat. If he is declared clear, then he has to wash his clothes. That's the more serious cases. With the less serious cases, there are not 2 7-day periods of quarantine. There's a one 7-day period of quarantine. Afterwards, after which, if everything's cleared up, he just goes home, and that's the end of it. Okay, so let's go on here. Okay, verse 39. Wara'a kohen wahine ba'or b'saram b'harot kehot levanot bohak hu parach ba'or tahor hu. Okay, so if, and there's a commentary here, so I'll just read it here, and then we'll go down to the commentary. So, and the pre-season look on the skin of their body, there are multiple dull white spots. It is tetter, and I have no idea what tetter is erupted in the skin. He is clean. So, but the implication is whatever the heck tetter is, you look it up. Robert also likes to do that. He likes to use words I've never heard before. I wish I'd known it before I took my SAT tests a couple of decades ago. The skin disease in humans or animals causing itchy or pustular patches such as eczema or ringworm. So let's just go with eczema, since that seems to be a more common thing that people know. Okay, so at any rate, if he takes a look at it and it's started to clear up, okay, then it's again, let's just read this. It's the best way. In the pre-season look on the skin of their body, there are multiple dull white spots. It is eczema. It is erupted in the skin. He's clean. In other words, it's not tzaraat, it's just a regular kind of skin condition. Okay, but it's not the special disease of tzaraat. Verse 40. U'ish ki yimaret rosho kereahu tahorhu. And if a person has a bald spot, if a person's hair has fallen out and he's become bald, he has a bald spot, then he's declared pure. He's just, he's got a regular bald spot. Happens, right, to the best of us. That's why we have the hair club for men, and I think they're having a discount. I think it's $399 for next week, so call up now while you still can. All right, verse 41. Wa'im mipa'at panav yimaret rosho gibeahu tahor hu. I want to get translated on that one. A couple of these. And should a man's hair fall out, he's bald on the pate, he's clean. All right, that's just a regular bald spot. Look at the commentary on that in a second. And if the front part of his hair falls out, he's bald on the forehead, he's clean. So these are just speaking about, male pattern baldness, pretty much. Okay, let's look at a little commentary there. Shave himself, tetter. Okay, so tetter, this all-purpose term for skin disease, herpes, impetigo, eczema, adopted by many English translations, seems appropriate for the intermediate Hebrew bohak, meaning a dermatological condition that for some reason was not thought to impart uncleanliness. In other words, just kind of a skin condition, but not but not tzaraat. He's bald, as with the early associations of burning rash and burns with infectious diseases. The law here goes against the grain of modern understanding by placing hereditary conditions such as baldness in the category of potentially contaminating skin disease. Carefully taxonomic according to its own lights. The law distinguishes between baldness fore and aft. So again, what they're saying here is that this baldness could potentially be tzaraat, but if it's just regular baldness, then it's not. Okay, verse 42. וכי יהיה בקרחת או בגבחת נגע לבן אדמדום, צרעת פורחת היא ובקרחתו או בגבחתו. Okay, gabachto. And so if in this bald spot that he's gotten, now there breaks out nega lavan, then if there breaks out white red skin, pinkish reddish skin, then it's not just a regular bald spot either on his top of his head or on his forehead. Now it's tzaraat. Okay, let's move on to verse 43. And again, let's see if there's any commentary here that's looking into. No. Okay, verse 43, where ra'oto kohen, and then the Kohen takes a look at him. Wahine et anega levana adam demet bikarchato, and now he sees that the inflammation, the inflamed area is red and white, maybe pinkish, within that bald spot, which is either on the top of his head or on his forehead. Or basar, just as tzaraat, as this white red skin that's associated with tzaraat may appear in the skin or on his body, right? So it appears in this bald spot that has appeared on his head. Ish tzaruahu tamehu itamei yitameinu akohen be'rosho nir'o. Then this is a person who has been afflicted with tzaraat. Tzaraat means leprous, again in the standard translation, but someone who has tzaraat, and the Kohen shall declare him, so shall certainly declare him as impure. He has this affliction of tzaraat on his head. Okay, so this from here to here, just to sum up, is dealing with bald spots. Is it a regular bald spot, or is it a bald spot that's associated with tzaraat, with this disease? Okay, verse 45. Ve'atzarua asher bo hanega bigadao yu prumim u'resho ye parua al safam ya'te v'tamei tamei yikra. Okay. Let's get a little commentary on that one. Robert Alter does have a commentary there. Actually, let's just do the translation first. 45. Okay. The affliction is on his head. So, and the person afflicted with skin blanch in whom the affliction is, his clothes shall be torn, and his hair disheveled, and his mustache he shall cover, and he shall call out, unclean, unclean. Okay, what the heck does that mean? Let's take a look at commentary. This rather odd expression seems to indicate that the afflicted person is to pull out some sort of scarf or head covering around his mouth. According to Avraham ibn Ezra, an excellent commentator, though rabbinical, very Karaite leaning, so that he will bring no harm to others from his contaminating breath. The law may stipulate mustache rather than mouth to mark the line up to which the covering is to be pulled. The tearing of the garment and the disheveled hair are ordinary signs of mourning, but here their evident function is to set aside the afflicted person from the healthy, like the bell that was rung by lepers in medieval times, and like the cry of unclean, unclean at the end of this verse. Okay, so let's go back and take a look at the Hebrew again. Okay, So this is now kind of a summary sentence, 45 and 46. For anyone who is declared as having tzara'at, as having this disease, as having this, again, how was Robert also translated, skin blight disease, this tzara'at disease, this applies. So we saw a bunch of situations which could cause a person to enter or to be declared as impure, as having tzara'at. And here it says in verse 45, asher bo nega. So if the person is in fact leprous, if he has this disease of tzara'at, and this affliction is upon him, then he has to rip his clothing, with rosho yeh parua, and he has to dishevel his hair. Okay, and he shall cover up his safam is a mustache. Okay, what tameh yikra, and he shall call out unclean, unclean, impure, impure. Okay, so this is basically, well, I think the commentary that Robert Alter gave us is pretty clear, but this is what anyone who's declared as having tzara'at has to do. And as Robert Alter correctly points out, these are signs of mourning. Okay, so the person essentially enters into a state of mourning that he has this disease. He rips his clothing. We know that that is a sign in ancient times, in the Tanakh, and even to this very day. If someone who's close to us dies, we rip the clothing. We dishevel our hair. That's also another a common sign of mourning. Okay, and this covering the mustache is not a common sign of mourning. But again, at least again, if we'll just take for he actually brings the Ibn Ezra, because the Ibn Ezra is saying that the mouth was covered up to prevent perhaps the spread to other people of this affliction. Okay, and then he yells out tameh tameh. Then he yells out unclean, unclean. He declares to everybody that he has this affliction of tzara'at. Verse 46. Kol yimei asher hanega bo itma. So all of the days that this affliction is upon him, he is to be considered impure. Tamehu. Okay, he shall be declared impure, and he is indeed impure. Badad yeshem michutz lemachane moshavo, and he shall sit alone outside of the camp. Okay, in outside of the camp where his dwelling is. Okay, outside of the camp, or his dwelling shall be outside of the camp. In other words, he's placed basically in a leper colony. Okay, he's placed outside of the camp, and I guess the concern here is that he's going to spread this impurity or spread this tzara'at to other people. Okay, and that brings us to the next section, which has now not to do with human beings. So, okay, let's just summarize here. Okay, so from here, chapter 13, we started the topic of tzara'at, of this skin affliction known as tzara'at, traditionally translated as leprosy, but it's not leprosy. Sometimes translated as scale disease, but it's not scale disease. Translated as skin blight by Robert Alter, which is a decent translation. Okay, so from here all the way down to here, we had different situations which could potentially cause the person to be declared as having tzara'at. If he is indeed declared as having tzara'at, then he has to rip his clothing, he has to dishevel his hair, signs of mourning. These are traditional mourning signs in the Tanakh, and he has to yell out, unclean, unclean. In other words, he has to announce to everybody that he is in a state of uncleanliness, that he has the cooties, that he has tzara'at, and then he has to go outside of the camp so as to be separated from those who do not have tzara'at. Again, perhaps with the fear of that perhaps it's going to spread if he's among the other people. Okay, until it clears up, and eventually it should clear up. Okay, all right. So Leviticus chapter 13, 1 through 45. Any questions? Any comments? Anybody? Awful. Yeah, it does not sound very pleasant. It does not sound very pleasant at all. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Guys, do you have any questions or comments?
They thought it was about leprosy, but you just explained that
It's not leprosy. It's absolutely not leprosy. Leprosy is a very different disease. It is some disease that is some kind of skin affliction that might have, you know, the implications of spiritual punishment or some kind of punishment from God, and that is associated with some kind of bright white spots, hair, white red skin, and causes that person to go into a state of ritual impurity, but is definitely not leprosy. Not leprosy at all. What's that?
I say just the description of
Yeah.
it. If you read the technical terms for leprosy, it's completely different.
Absolutely. There's no falling off the skin or falling off body parts or anything like that. Okay, I've actually got to plug in now. So I think this is a,
Paul just asked you a question about that. He said, why wasn't Aaron punished with Miriam?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe it was Miriam who started, maybe Miriam started the conversation, and maybe Aaron was just kind of like saying, "Oh, okay, okay," or agreeing. But it doesn't say. It doesn't say why.
Is it possible that he was a Cohen and that could not happen to a Cohen? Even though he-
I don't think that would be the reason. I don't think that would be the reason. I mean, Kohanim can be. I don't see any reason to assume that Kohanim could not be punished like anyone else if they're deserving. I think we're just not given the information why Miriam was punished that way and Aaron was not punished in that way because we're not given the full story. We're not given the full story. So I'm sure the rabbis fill it in with a bunch of midrashim, but we're just not given the full story for whatever reason. Yahweh decided at this point that was the punishment that Miriam was deserving of, and that Aaron was not. Okay, let me plug in. I'm going to put a song on for a minute while I plug in, and then maybe we will go on and finish the chapter. I think that would be a good idea. I was thinking maybe I'd go back to this issue of Kavod Yahweh. We'll see. We'll decide. Let me put on a song for a second, and then we'll decide what we're going to do. And we're going to finish off the study probably in about 20 minutes because we're going to go visit Ramat Trump. Is that correct? We're going to go to Ramat Trump Heights, nearby, here in the Golan. Okay. Be right back. Actually, you know what? It's going to take me a second to plug in, so I won't put on the song. Just give me 1 second, everyone, and we'll be right back. You guys can chat, talk among yourselves. If there's any questions, just let me know, and we'll be plugged in just a second. Oh, let's see right here. I need that piece. Piece. Go with it.
Being here watching the live show.
Oh yeah. It's interesting, right? You're watching the live show and you're part of the live show.
Well, there you go.
Okay. All right. So we're back. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Anybody? Missouri, right in the middle of the north part. Okay. You guys are talking among yourselves. Very good. Okay. Any questions? Any comments before we move on? So let's get to the end of Leviticus chapter 13. I was thinking maybe we'd go to this other topic, which is fascinating, of Kavod Yahweh, but I think we'll go to the end of Leviticus 13. Again, we'll kind of do express mode because we get the idea here, right? We're not Kohanim. We don't need to be 1,000% experts in this. We're not going to be ourselves unless we are Kohanim. But at this point in time, we're not going to be declaring anyone pure and impure. We want to get a sense of what this is about. Okay. And so we start now in Leviticus 13. We see that we're talking not just about human beings that can get tzara'at, but we're talking about clothing now that can get tzara'at. And when we get to chapter 14, okay, we're going to actually talk about homes that can get tzara'at. And let's put it this way, maybe you should all get tzara'at insurance because if if it turns out your home has tzara'at, then it has to be broken down. So run out right now, call up Geico or whatever, and get your tzara'at insurance before it's too late. Okay. Because once the temple gets restored, you're going to need it. Hopefully not, but better safe than sorry. Okay, mildewed clothing. So we're now verse 47, and we're going to see that these are now inanimate objects, clothing, and in chapter 14, houses that can actually contract tzara'at. So verse 47. V'habeged ki iebo negat tzara'at, bebeged semer or bebeged pishtim. So a piece of clothing that has contracted this disease of tzara'at, whether it's semer, whether it's wool, or whether it's flax. Okay. Now, what's very interesting here is semer and fishtim. We know that there's a prohibition in the Torah of not having clothing that's made out of these two materials together, right? It's called shatnez, and here it's mentioned as two different types of clothing, two separate different types of clothing. And so this implies that these were the two main materials that were used for clothing in ancient times, right? Semer, which is wool, usually from sheep hair, but it could have also been goat hair, but it just means animal hair. And pishtim, which is flax, okay, which is thread that's made out of flax, which they do to this very day, are the main materials that were used to make clothing in ancient Israel. Okay, and each of these types of clothing can contract tzara'at, or bishti, or be'erev lefishtim, or okay. So this is now getting into technical terms of weaving. So this is the warp and the woof. And let's see, let me just take a look at this for 1 second. So this is 48, okay? And I'll just read Robert Alter's translation for a second, okay? And should a garment have it in it a scaly affliction, whether in a wool garment or a linen garment, whether in the warp or in the woof, okay? So the warp and the woof, these are when you make material, okay, of the linen or the wool. So the warp and the woof are, I am not an expert in weaving, but here, let's get a picture, warp and woof. So I think one is the horizontal direction and one is the vertical direction, okay? There we go, okay? So wait, let's go back here. So the essential foundation or base of any structure or organization from weaving in which the warp, the threads that run lengthwise, and the woof, the threads that run across, make up the fabric. The Constitution and Declaration, okay, get that? So here we go, right? So we have the warp, which runs in these pictures up and down. Oops. Here we go, actually. Okay. So the warp runs up and down, and the woof runs, or the weft runs left and right, and that's the way fabrics are made, right? They're intertwined, basically. Okay. So bishti or ba'erev lepishtim. So in any of these parts of the clothing, or if it's clothing made out of animal skin, leather in other words, or b'chol malachet or in anything else that's created using animal skin. So let's say a vessel or maybe a saddle or something like that. Okay, verse 49. Wahaya hanega ye rak or adamdam babeged or ba'or. And if this affliction, this mildew, let's call it, I think that was a good translation here, or if this affliction of tzarat on the clothing is either green colored, greenish, or reddish, whether it's in the clothing, the piece of clothing that's made out of either wool or flax, or whether it's in the piece of clothing or other material that's made out of leather, out of animal skins, okay? Or bashti or ba'erev, whether it's in again the warp of the wolf, or b'chol kli or in any other thing that's made out of animal skins, negatzaratu. Okay, so if you look at your clothing, whether it's made out of wool, whether it's made out of flax, linen, or whether it's made out of leather, and it's off color, either greenish or it's reddish, okay? Then negatzaratu, then it has attracted this disease of tzaraat, or this affliction, or this condition. Can't call it really a disease or an affliction. This condition of tzaraat. So the interesting thing that we see here is that it's not just human beings that can get tzaraat, it's clothing, and in the next chapter we're going to see also houses that can get tzaraat. Okay, har'a el kohen, you should show it to the kohen. Verse 50. Ra'a kohen et naga, and the kohen shall take a look at the affliction or the sore. Wahiskir et anega shivat yamim, and this piece of clothing shall be quarantined, shall be put aside for 7 days. Verse 51. And he'll take a look at the affliction on the 7th day. To make a long story short, the Kohen is going to take a look at that piece of clothing on the 7th day to see if it's spread out, if this reddish or this greenish color, discoloration is spread out. Okay. And if it's the case, then this tzaraat is alive, mam eret, which is not a very common word, but let's take a look at it. Translated here as one second here. It's malignancy. Okay, that's an interesting way to translate it. Okay, but it's alive. It's an active affliction on this piece of clothing. Okay, tamehu, and now this piece of clothing is declared as tameh. Okay, with saraf et abeged or et shti or et erev betzemer or v'shtim or et kol kliya or asher yebo hanega ki tzarat mameret hi ba'esh. To make a long story short, that you take that piece of clothing and now you burn it in the fire. That's it. It's destroyed. Okay. Verse 53. Ve'im yir'eh kohen wahine lo pasa nega babeged or bashti or ba'erev or b'chol kli or. So if the kohen takes a look at it at the end of the 7 days and it has not spread out, wa siwa hakohen wa wit kipsu. So if it hasn't spread out, it's still there. It hasn't disappeared, but it hasn't spread out. Now there's a second 7-day quarantine for this piece of clothing. Right? Verse 55. I'm sorry, I missed one point. Okay, v'kipsu. So tziva kohen v'kipsu. So at the end of the 7 days, if it still hasn't disappeared, then they wash it. Okay, they wash that piece of clothing, and then it's put aside for another 7 days. And at the end of the 7 days, after it's been washed, okay, the nega v'hine lo apach nega et aino or nega lo pasa tamehu. And if it turns out that after that second set of 7 days, that it still has not disappeared. Okay, its color didn't change. In other words, that greenish or reddish discoloration didn't disappear, but at the same time, it didn't spread out. Tamehu, it's declared as being impure. Ba'esh tisrafenu, you burn it in the fire. Bechetet hi bekarchato or begabchato. Okay, and this is an eating way on his head or on the bald spots of his head, or on his back of his head, or the front of his head. And let me get a little commentary on that one. So that one I'm not picking up on what that exactly means. Let's see what Robert Alter has to say about that one. It's 55. So let's get a translation here for that one. So 55 over here. Oops. Here. And the priest shall see after the article the affliction has been laundered, and look, if the affliction has not changed color, and the affliction is not spread, it is unclean, and fire shall burn it. It is corrosion, whether on its inner side or its outer side. Okay, I see what he's trying to say. Let's get a little commentary on that one. That's 55. Okay. The crucial criterion is the color. Even if the blight has not spread, it is regarded as unclean because the color has not changed. The Hebrew pachetet has not been identified, so it's one of these words again that is, I think it's the only place it appears in the entire Tanakh, but etymologically is associated with either a term that means diminution, like pachot, or one that means pit. Okay, so how does he translate it again? He translates it as corrosion. Okay, whether on its inner side or on its outer side. To make a long story short, so to make a long story short, if after it's been washed and waited a second day, if it another set of 7 days, if it hasn't completely cleared up, then it is declared to have this pachetet, this corrosion, okay, this mildew infestation, and it's burnt. Okay. Verse 56. So if after that second set of 7 days, remember, at the end of the first set of 7 days, the clothing is washed. Now another seven days are waited. And at the end of those 7 days, if the Kohen takes a look at it and the color that discoloration has disappeared, okay, it's dimmed away, then you shall rip away that infected part from the relevant piece of clothing. And if after that infected part has been ripped away, in other words, so it's cleared up, it looks good, it looks back to normal, but you still cut away that piece, and now you're going to wait to see if any of these symptoms appear on the remaining parts of the clothing. So okay, so if it then spreads out into the remaining part of the clothing, okay. So, wait, let me just see one thing. So then, if I'm picking this up correctly, then it's the remaining part of the clothing. If it appears anywhere in the remaining part of the clothing, then that piece of clothing is burnt at that point. And if it doesn't appear in any other place within the clothing, then it's washed the second time, and then it's declared to be in a state of purity. Okay, in other words, it no longer has this mildew infection or this corrosion. Zot torat neged tzaraat beged atzemer or a pishtim, and this summary sentence, okay, very typical. We know at the end of a Torah, at the end of a set of instructions, and again, almost always, with the possible exception of the book of Deuteronomy, when we see the word Torah, which we see here in verse 59, it doesn't mean the entire Torah. It means the instruction manual for a particular topic. So this is the instruction manual. This is a set of instructions for neged tzaraat, for the affliction of tzaraat, beged semer, in a piece of clothing that's made out of wool or out of flax, or the warp or the woof, or any piece of clothing that's made out of, or any vessel that's made out of, whether it's clothing or not, that's made out of leather, out of animal skin, litaro or litamo, to declare it as pure or declare it as impure. Okay, and that brings us to the end of Leviticus chapter 13. Okay, and that's it. All right, let's take a look. Let's just take a look briefly ahead to chapter 14, which we'll deal with next week. So now we're going to get into, so remember, back in chapter 13, in verse, where was it? Okay. Over here. Okay, if the leper, I'm sorry, we're not saying leper, we're not saying lepers. If the person with tzara'at, or if the person has been declared to have tzara'at, I'm talking about human beings here, not clothing, then he has to rip his clothing. He has to dishevel his hair, and he has to tie some kind of cloth around his mouth. Okay, and then he has to yell out tameh tameh, unclean, unclean, and live outside of the camp. So he now has tzara'at. He's now officially declared to have tzara'at. So how does he get out of it? Right? He's not going to stay in a position of tzara'at forever, hopefully. Well, that's what we're going to deal with in chapter 14, cleansing the leper, the ritual for once you have indeed been declared to have tzara'at, how you now rid yourself of that state of ritual impurity and get rid of the tzara'at. Okay? And then after that, then just as we spoke about clothing today, then when we get to this section, we're going to speak about houses that can get the affliction of tzara'at, and then how the home can be either cleansed or it has to be destroyed. Okay, if it can't be cleansed. Okay, so that's it. And those are the 2 chapters on tzara'at. And then we get into some little bit things that I think are going to be more accessible, right? Because we really don't have. I mean, we do know and we do see people with skin diseases, but we don't really have any kind of like natural, touch point for what this is, right? This is something that is very foreign to us. Okay, so there's some kind of skin disease that appears, or some kind of skin condition, then it clears up, and then there's something that's left behind. Okay, it's not a condition, or it's some situation that's really accessible to us in this day and age, right? Which is why these chapters on leprosy are considered kind of, I guess, not accessible, or a bit. I don't know if I'd use the word confusing, but a bit non-accessible, right? This is very, very foreign to us. We can relate when we study chapter 12, where we speak about the after effects of childbirth. Let's call that the afterbirth. The after effects of childbirth, then that's something that's very relatable to us, right? Because that's something that women have children to this very day and age. But Leviticus 13 to 14, I would say, are arguably maybe the 2 hardest chapters to wrap one's head around, because we have no idea what this tzara'at is really. We don't have anything that we can really relate to it in this day and age. Yes, we know of skin diseases, but they're just skin diseases, right? So where does this tzara'at, where's this leftover condition that somehow is a special situation which causes a person to become rich? Where does it come into play? And then we also saw that it's a punishment that Miriam received. We saw that's one of the signs that Moses was given to show to the Israelites when he came back from Egypt, right? So it's a bit inaccessible, but I think nonetheless it's interesting and important to go through, right? So we'll just take it step by step. Next week we'll get into, again, the cleansing from the state of being mitzura'at, from having this disease of tzara'at, this affliction of tzara'at, and then we'll get into, just as we spoke about the clothing, what happens if a house, like clothing, actually contracts this disease of tzara'at. And of course, in the case of clothing, in the case of a house, these are not human beings, these are not even animals, these are inanimate objects. So if they cannot be rid of that affliction, then ultimately they're destroyed. Human beings, we don't just go around, killing human beings because they have some kind of affliction. And that's what we'll do in the first section next week. How does a person get out? How does a human being get out of a state of being mitzurah, of having this disease, of this affliction of tzara'at, once he is declared to have been into it? Okay, and then once we get through chapter 14, then we go on to chapter 15, which is a bit more accessible, and that has to do with when we get to it, we'll get to it. All right. So let's sum up here. Any questions? Any comments? For it.
A comment, when I was working in Spat doing own handyman work,
Mm-hmm.
it was amazing how much mold there was.
Mm.
It was red and green mold.
Mm.
And
Really?
Yeah, especially where rabbi. And it was very, very telling.
So let me just repeat because I don't know if anyone heard it because I have the headphones on. So Ben was saying when he worked in Sfat, working on, I guess, remodeling homes or fixing homes, he saw many homes in Sfat, especially homes of rabbis. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That had red or green discoloration, mold discolorations on their walls. Okay, well.
No comment.
Yeah, exactly. Say no more, right? All right. Anybody else have a comment or a question? So Itan Avior says, if it was common knowledge in ancient times that there might be another source regarding recording the affliction, since you don't think it's leprosy. I'm not sure what your question is there. Related only to Mishkan time or brought over into the temple period? No, absolutely. Brought into the temple period. Whenever I say the Mishkan, the temple, the holy temple was basically, it's the same for all intents and purposes. It's the same as the Mishkan. The Mishkan was a movable tent. Once the place, the permanent place that Yahweh chose that this is going to be my home forever was determined, then soon afterwards, David determined that place and or was shown that that's the place that it's going to be, and then his son Solomon built the temple. Then that's it. Yahweh is no longer wandering around in a tent. He's in a permanent house, and that's what we know as a temple. But all of the rules are pretty much the same. Okay, they're pretty much the same. Okay. And Mauricio says mold can be quite dangerous. I would relate it to mold nowadays, very possibly. Yep, very possibly. Yeah, mold can be dangerous. Okay, all right then, everybody. Let's end it here. I think it's been a good study. These are very technical issues, so I think it's actually good that the studies are a little bit shorter when we're dealing with such technical issues. I'll remind everybody, going back to the initial monologue, to, if you get a chance, take a listen to that video that I was mentioning about transforming worry into prayer, taking something that is just seems overwhelming and intractable, and not getting caught up in it, not getting overwhelmed by it, but nonetheless taking it, transferring the burden over to Yahweh, or transferring a portion of the burden over to Yahweh, and then transforming that through the power of prayer from worry, transforming worry into faith, into the sense that everything can be handled by Him, that He has the power and He's the ability to handle any situation that we get into, and then that actually frees our mind to be able to deal with the situation rather than getting caught in this endless whirlpool of fear and worry. Yes.
Because one thing will happen, more than one thing maybe. The answer shows up.
Mm-hmm.
When you take your mind off of the negative,
Yep.
something will come toward you. I don't know what it is.
Absolutely.
You'll see the answer.
Absolutely. And Ariella makes a very good point that when you do that, when you are able to disconnect from that fear and that worry, then somehow the answer seems to just, now you're in a much more much more relaxed state of mind. You're in a state of waiting to receive answers rather than, scurrying around trying to find the answers in a desperate fashion. And somehow magically the answers tend to show up. I think it's a very, very deep and true point, and that's also a point that he makes in the video. So please, especially because I know so many people now are going, so I speak to, I will not mention any names, but I speak to a number of friends that I have on an individual basis, and I know they're going through very difficult times. If you are, or if you know someone who is, take a listen to that video, cut out the word Jesus wherever you hear it, replace it with the word Yahweh, and it's going to be a very, very powerful video. I've listened to it a number of times, and the advice that he gives, that C.S. Lewis gives there, is very, very powerful, I think. Okay, so let's end it here. I thank you all for joining us. This has been the World Alliance. This has been Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And I wish you guys all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov. Ben says Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov, no matter where you are in the world. I am coming to you, as I mentioned, from Katzrin in the central Golan Heights. And I'm so happy to be back in the land of Israel, and happy to be spending the Shabbat/Shavuot with Ben and Ariella. Tomorrow is Shavuot, I should mention, right? Or actually tonight at sundown. Actually, Sundown here is in a couple of minutes. So Shavuot is starting now. I think I'm going to try to do a study about Shavuot tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. I don't want to be a 100%. I don't want to make a 100% commitment or 100% promise about that. We'll see how the day kind of plays itself out. But if the opportunity presents itself, then I'll publish the details about when and where the study is going to be. So once again, I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom, a Shavuot Tov, a Chag Shavuot Sameach. And remember, Shavuot has nothing to do with Matan Torah. It doesn't have anything to do with the giving of the Torah. It doesn't have anything to do with Mount Sinai. It has to do with what? It has to do with thanking God for the wheat harvest, which is about ready now in the land of Israel. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shavuot Tov. As usual, we'll go out with a little bit of music. And I wish you guys all an amazing Shavuot and an amazing week.
I think we should sing this. Let's try this. Kolot baleva enima nefesh Yehudi omiyah ulfatei mizrach kadima Ein Zion, Sophia, Olovda, Tzitvatenu, Atikva, Ad Shnot Alpayim, Liot Amhoshi, Be'atzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. One more time. Kolot baleva ve'nima nefesh Yehudi omiyah ufatei mizrach kadima Ein Zion, Sophia, Olovda, Tzitvatenu, Atikva, Ad Shnot Alpayim, Liot Amchoshi, Be'atzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Olovda Tzitvatenu Shnot Alpayim, Liot Amchoshi, Be'atzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim, Liot Amchoshi, Be'atzenu